Well, welcome back. It's now time for Media Watch France. And for that, as ever, I'm joined here in the studio by James Creedon. Good evening to you, James.
Good evening, Catherine.
And we're going to start off with a rather macabre story.
Yes.
Anders Behring Breivik, of course, on trial for the Norway killings. 77 people killed in gun and bomb attacks. He's been using a lot of video games. Apparently took a whole year off to use video games. What's the reaction like?
Well,
online?
I suppose this debate comes up quite a bit, doesn't it? When at various intervals with various, horrible shootings, people kind of say, "Oh, how were they influenced by popular culture, by video games, by movies, etc." So you can see he said today that he spent a year essentially training, as he said, for the Oslo shootings on World of Warcraft, where he was able to work on his precision of shooting, etc. I mean, it's a stunning claim for a guy who is clearly mad.
And he's clearly unhinged, but it's a lot of time, isn't it, to be sat in your home playing World of Warcraft?
That's right.
Although
So
quite an addictive game.
some people saying, chicken and the egg, what leads to what? Was he already? In any case, let's take a look at some of the reactions online. One person tweeting saying, "Breivik's case is another great example of why games like World of Warcraft should be banned. 16 hours a day of play to make him insane." That's on Twitter. That's one reaction to what we've just been discussing. Elsewhere on the website of Time magazine, I'm not sure if we can see the computer, but in any case, I'll tell you.
I think we're having a little problem with that link, actually. But tell us about Time magazine.
I'll have to give you the visual. In any case,
describe it. Paint a picture.
Exactly. On Time.com, they're saying, look, every single time something like this happens, it's the same debate. When horrible things happen, says Amal Rajan, writing for Time, we look for simple answers, for easy rationalizations, ways to essentially say, oh, this is why so and so did such and such. And he said it was the same with dancing or jazz music in the 20s, reading comics in the 50s, listening to rock and roll in the 60s, or playing Dungeons and Dragons in the 80s. So he's sceptical.
Difference between a bit of jazz and gunning people down in a video game, though.
I'm not sure jazz could really in any way be linked to awful
Seems a little
killings.
Unfair, but.
And I think really the link being drawn here is perhaps not as wild or as far-fetched. Now, other elements of discussion around the Breivik trial, which seems to be attracting an awful lot of interest overseas. Amal Rajan writing this piece rather for The Independent. The death penalty, it has come back into the debate. People saying for an atrocity such as this, shouldn't somebody just really be put to death because it was just such a horrendous act? Now, the thing is, he himself yesterday said, hang me, that's okay, that's what I'm here for.
He either wants to be acquitted or to have the death penalty.
That's right. Now, what they're saying here is this, it would be why a spot of torture and a long rope would be too good for Anders Breivik. Now, they're pointing out that seeing as he wants more right-wing policies to be brought into government, the best way of showing him the way Norwegian society or any democratic liberal society works is to resist those calls. So what he essentially says, and Amal Rajan, is we cannot fight hate with hate, which is a quote that has been coming back again and again. There's also been a lot of quoting of the Norwegian Prime Minister, Jens Stoltenberg, who said the answer to what he did will be more democracy, more openness and greater political participation. Laurent Geoffrin, a French journalist, said something similar for the Nouvel Observateur magazine. He said the Norwegian authorities' refusal in this affair to introduce any exceptions to the state of law is something that is admirable, and in fact it's the best way of fighting terrorism, to kind of insist on more openness and more freedom.
Yeah, there's been a lot of admiration coming out for the Norwegian justice system and for some of the survivors who've been talking about the trial.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to move on to a different story, one we've been touching on in the news. The debate about how to prevent the results of the French presidential election from leaking out early. There's an 8 p.m. embargo on Sunday. Is it really possible, James, in the age of Twitter?
All right. Well, this is the question really today in the coverage of the debate, and we'll be looking at this a little bit later as well in Campaign Chronicles in the next half hour, because it's one of the big issues. It isn't possible. I mean, with Twitter and with Facebook, the results will be broadcast on the Belgian, on the Swiss media, exit poll results from 6:30 onwards. So it's perfectly possible for internet users to share those results online. The state is kind of trying to play catch up really with the digital age, which has moved well beyond these legal restrictions. It is a case of technology versus the law. And indeed, even today, Nicolas Sarkozy said this is actually an obsolete, out-of-date law. So he's even admitting that the state which he essentially runs is trying to implement laws that are essentially out of date. Because what they're saying is we are going to try to fine internet users. We're going to try to trace them.
€75,000 if you're caught.
It's pretty extraordinary.
Be careful there, everyone.
So
out
as
on
some people have been
Twitter,
saying online,
in
if you're afraid that you're going to have a boring girls' night in during the election, just retweet the results and you'll have 15 big, strong policemen coming through the door. That's
and a hefty bill. So it depends how much you're willing to pay to get those policemen coming through your door.
That was one tweet, people making fun of it.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed, James Creedon there with
Thanks,
Media
Catherine.
Watch. Thanks. Well, it's now time to catch up with the very latest